Hey everybody, and welcome to this video, I guess, about the Microsoft game showcase that we got to see. When was it? Like last night, I think, as I record this video. I'll try and put it up as soon as possible. A lot of speculation here about what Microsoft would be announcing. We knew we were going to see Halo. We didn't really know what else we would be seeing. We knew we'd be seeing Halo gameplay, but we didn't know what that would look like. And it's really interesting what Microsoft, I think, are doing at the minute. We'll kind of go through each game kind of one by one, but just to give an overall kind of thought on the overall experience of it, which was they did what they said, just they showed games. There's a lot of very interesting looking games in there. I think we're starting to see the fruits of the acquisitions that Microsoft made from the studios. We probably won't really see the true benefits of that for maybe, I don't know, in a decade, perhaps, when they've released maybe a couple of games down the line there. In the same way that Sony with something like Naughty Dog, we're seeing now the fruits of the original kind of Uncharted games and those kind of things. Not that they were bad, but, we're seeing them build and progress and, really eke the best out of the PlayStation hardware. We haven't seen that yet with Microsoft. We didn't see that, I don't think, in this showcase, but we did see some promising signs. And they did what they said, which was games. There wasn't perhaps as much gameplay, I think, as everyone would have liked. That's always the criticism, though, isn't it? Of, these things is you want more gameplay. They don't really have it. So you have to kind of bear that in mind. But as a whole, I think it was all right. It was okay. Will it make me go out and buy an Xbox? No. Even if I didn't own a PC, I think I'd be still very on the fence with this and the PlayStation. There's still a lot more to learn before, if you only had that money for one, didn't have a PC, you had money for one, no other factors were taken into account, like my friends have all got it, etc. So I'm looking for my tea. Then which one are you going to pick up? I think right now I would possibly be tempted for Xbox just because I think the Game Pass is so strong. Yes, you're going to miss out on some of the great games like Spider-Man, etc. But, if you have other things you have to pay for in life, income is perhaps, tight, and you don't want to be spending, £50 to £100 a month on video games. You want to instead spend, £15, less than that. I think it's like £8 on PC or something, but combine it with like the online, that is an attractive proposition to get pretty much, a lot of extremely good games with that. So I thought in the background I'll play a little bit of the Halo Infinite campaign gameplay while we kind of talk about it a little bit here. So Halo Infinite, very anticipated. I'm not quite sure why, in all honesty, because I feel like Halo, from a lot of the fans of the community, I feel like Halo's been terrible since Halo 3. So I don't know why people still keep getting excited about them if they're so bad. I say that, a little bit tongue-in-cheek because, at the end of the day, they weren't bad games after Halo 3. But I think what we've seen throughout these games is, in my opinion anyway, like a real lack of evolution in the game. I watched this game and this trailer and I felt like I was back in like 2015. Like the graphics did not impress me. I know that a lot of people watched on stream. I actually didn't. I watched the 4K version which Microsoft uploaded to YouTube, and I still was not impressed with the graphics in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't look next gen in any way. It actually looks worse than some of the current gen games out there. I'm not just talking about PC. Things like The Last of Us 2 graphically look way better texture wise than this game. It did not impress me in any way. Graphically, it looked very smooth. The action looked fun. But it just looked exactly like Halo, like I've seen like so many times. I've played a lot of Halo games. I enjoy them, but I failed to get excited now for it. I know a lot of people will be like, well, actually, the Halo campaign is a side thing, kind of like Call of Duty. It's all about the multiplayer. That's what's going to keep me going. But still, I appreciate that graphics are not really as important in multiplayer games. You know, you can see the success of something like PUBG is testament to that. That game straight up looks like trash, but you know, even Fortnite obviously doesn't have particularly good graphics, but it does what it does. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this is an ugly game. What I'm saying is that, like, if you said to me this was coming out, this was on Xbox One X, I'd be like, yeah, it's all right. If you're saying to me this is on the next gen console, which we're going to be paying however many hundreds of pounds for, I'm not impressed with it. Sure, you know, we've seen a lot of games which trailers come out and look fancy, and then they end up just not living up to expectation or being downgraded. I don't think this is going to get downgraded. I'd be super surprised. But yeah, it just didn't really impress me there. What does impress me is I quite like the kind of open worldness of it. It looks really interesting. Doesn't look like we're going to have quite as linear kind of type of gameplay. A lot of people kind of speculating. We don't really know yet, but I mean, this looks fairly open. I don't know if it's a case of, it's an open world or kind of what, but that would make things a bit more interesting. Sure, we've seen open world 100 times 100 million times in video games. But for Halo to do that would be something different. So I would respect that a little bit if they decided to kind of go down that line. I don't really know what the problem with open world is, that you either have to have this kind of like stunning world to kind of traverse in, which I don't think is what Halo fans are really after. I don't think they're there for the kind of the immersion. In a sense, they're there for the action. So then you have to kind of fill that open world with constant action, don't you, a little bit? And that tends to lose me in open worlds a little bit when I can't move 10 meters without, a patrol of enemies coming or something like that happening. Listen, at the end of the day, I have the Xbox Game Pass on PC. I'm assuming this is coming out on PC because they've done obviously the Master Chief Collection. Assuming it'll come out on Game Pass, and I will pick it up and I will play it, and I will probably record it. So I'm not really the person they need to speak to with this. I guess the people they need to speak to are these people who perhaps are on the fence between PlayStation and Xbox, going to look at this game and go, I need to be playing this. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case, in all honesty. Graphics are not everything, but the problem is when you're trying to sell a new console, you have to be able to show what is doing different to the previous console. At the minute, I'm like, well, how come, I could pick up a Xbox One X console probably for about £80 when the new Xbox comes out on eBay. Why would I pay, I don't know, £400 for a new Xbox, for example, when the graphics don't look any better? Okay, it might be 60 frames per second, but unless it was going to do something really impressive, maybe like 120, something like that, I don't know why I would, why would I turn around and pick up an Xbox from this one game alone? I don't think I would. Halo has kind of been heralded as the kind of savior of Microsoft you know, what are you going to do, I guess? We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the multiplayer might be awesome and might be great fun, and they might have loads of interesting modes, and it might be worth to pick up alone. But if you're going to do a campaign, like I don't know, it just feels like the combat looks good. Like it does look good. It looks fun, and that obviously the gameplay is more important. But I feel like nowadays we're getting the gameplay and we're getting the graphics. So why are we having to compromise so much? It's yeah, I don't know. It wasn't a good start, I don't think, for it. I was really prepared for something to be like, oh, this looks cool, and then it just looked pretty disappointing. You know, I'm not here for the Halo lore as much, really. I'm not really big into that. I like the idea of it all, but realistically, I'm not that Halo kind of mega fan here. So it, yeah, I want to play an interesting campaign with a good story. But I feel like they've done that in Halo 1, 2, and 3, and now everything else is just a little superfluous. For example, the face of these guys, it doesn't look good. Yeah, so not overly impressed with like Halo as such, but there were a few other games in here which I am excited for. Next up, we have State of Decay 3. I don't quite. I mean, firstly, it was quite quick since State of Decay 2, which was not really a success. I thought I will say they did a lot of updates to State of Decay 2, and it was a lot better when that came out. And it was on Xbox Game Pass, and I played it. It was free, and it was all right. It was pretty good. The tone of this feels very different to State of Decay 2. I felt like State of Decay 1 and 2 had a little bit of a humorous side to them, and this doesn't feel like that at all. So I'm interested to know if they're going in a very different direction, like maybe they are going into more of a kind of survival horror direction rather than a survival horror but with some dark humor sort of thing. That would be interesting if they did kind of move into that a little bit, do something different. I think they need to do something different because it's interesting building up your camp and everything like that and the different survivors, etc. But it did feel like it was really very like last gen, and this trailer looks decent enough, but it's a trailer, it's not gameplay. It could be absolutely anything. So we'll see from that. Until I see some actual gameplay, we'll wait and see. FORZA, weird, because I'm sure they showed some like gameplay in the last Xbox like showcase, and then in this one they didn't show any more, and I thought that was really interesting because while FORZA is not going to make me buy a console, you have GTA, you have FORZA, like it's one or the other. It doesn't really sell a console in my opinion. It is a good thing to show off like next gen graphics, because without wanting to be disparaging towards kind of racing games, they're easier to make them look prettier than say a big third person open world game, so yeah, it's interesting. It looks good. I'm sure it'll be nice. I like a good racing game, but I fail to get excited by FORZA. I really do. Same with Gran Turismo, to be honest with you. We've seen so many of them nowadays that I just really, really fail to get excited. You have a new one every year. It looks a little bit better than the last. Same with the Horizon games. Same with GT. Even like Project Cars 3 is coming out, and I'm like, ugh. I liked Project Cars, but I'm like, it's difficult. It's like a new FIFA every year, but without the updates. It just looks a little bit prettier. It's nothing really that I'm that excited for. There's nothing really there that excites me. The Outer Worlds getting DLC. I wasn't really enamored with the Outer World. I played it. My biggest problem with it was I just felt the combat was boring. I thought the characters, the world was really interesting, but the combat was just boring. And when the actual gameplay, I just felt did absolutely nothing new. And So I don't think I'll be checking out the DLC either, to be honest with you. I'll skip that, playing that one. Balan Wonderworld, not for me. Tell me why. That's from Don't Nod, isn't it? Who did like what's it called? I own it, and I've played it, and I can't remember the name of it. Life is Strange. Life is Strange. They did Life is Strange, I'm sure. And it looks very, very similar to that. This kind of brother, sister, they see things and all that malarkey. Again, not going to make me buy a console, not going to sway me, but a decent enough title, I guess, in there. EVERWILD looks really interesting. This was by, I think it was Riot, wasn't it? Who are obviously, no, Rare, sorry, not Riot, jeez. Rare, sorry. Rare, obviously, best known currently for Sea of Thieves. This has what feels like a fairly similar kind of graphical style, but looks very different. Although, there was the I don't know, one of the heads of Rare afterwards talking about it and saying about this world, and you have like these powers to look at nature. Like, looks beautiful, I will say. The animation, the art style, I really like. And yeah, I kept getting these like flashbacks to like Sea of Thieves, where it was like releasing it with very little content, and as a result, we're only now really is the Sea of Thieves like, and it is getting, I think they had like 9 million players or something like that, of which like 1 million were on Steam or something. Obviously the Game Pass helps, but now it's got content, it's actually looking like a decent game. I worry that maybe EverWild will be a similar thing, where it releases and you're like, this could be incredible, but there's just not enough content out there. That's gross. In my opinion. It looks interesting. I don't know if it'll be for me. I like the art style, but yeah, I'd have to kind of wait and see on that one. I wonder if it is kind of the multiplayer thing, like those different people could be, or different characters, or how the gameplay actually looks, because obviously this is just the trailer. We don't know much about it. Yeah, it's like, what do you actually do in the game? That's the question, isn't it? This can all look very fancy. The animation can look great, but what do you actually do? But I do like the art style. Same way, Sea of Thieves is a beautiful game. Like, the oceans in that are just stunning to look at, and like, they have a particular style which I really like, which is they're not necessarily going for the most like photo kind of realistic style, but it hit, it hits the right notes in terms of just look stunning. So I like it. Grounded, we've kind of seen before. It looks really interesting, actually. I didn't play. I think there was an open beta or something like that. I didn't play it, but I did watch some people stream it and stuff, and it looked quite good fun. I don't know if it's. I thought that Cyberpunk was quite funny, what they said. I don't know if it's kind of put out there as one of those kind of like, not AAA games, but like a kind of like a, I don't want to say like a single kind of A game. Like, it would be like £25 to £30, and you'd get updates every now and then, and it'd be good fun. But perhaps it's not going to be the be fun to jump in with your mates for a few hours and stuff. But it's not going to like change your world. I get a feeling like it's kind of that sort of game. And which is fine, because we need those games out there. Not everything has to be 100-hour, marathon or anything, or constantly playing it all the time. But it looks decent enough. So yeah, I'll check that out for sure. Ori and the Will of the Wisps, they were saying that on Xbox Series X it can play in 4K 120 frames per second. I thought that was really interesting, because I wonder how many people who have an Xbox Series X will be able to play at 120 frames per second. I know I have the ability to play like high refresh rates. I don't know if they can go that high. I don't know how it looks or plays either on them. So the idea, I guess, there is that people are maybe buying a gaming monitor, or maybe they. This is a weird thing, because if you have a PC already and you have a high refresh rate monitor, well, firstly, a 4K high refresh rate monitor is exceptionally expensive. You're talking like £800 to £900. In the same way that an OLED like 120 hertz monitor is extremely expensive. So the people they're aiming for there, I'm not sure. 1080p 120 frames per second, that's a different matter. I wonder, like, if Xbox brought in something where it was like, listen, you can play at a high refresh rate, it will just scale down your resolution. That would be really interesting, wouldn't it? Because that's kind of what PC has as an advantage. This is the first time we've seen a game, I think, on console ever turn around and say you can play 120 frames per second, which is fascinating. I think that was actually a really interesting point, and one of the biggest surprises I had of the whole showcase was, firstly, I was like, why? But secondly, I was like, well, why has no one done this sooner? But then also, who's the market for this? Again, if they bring in a console and you can play things like Warzone, Fortnite at high refresh rates on an Xbox Series X, you can plug in a mouse and keyboard. You've got a game changer there, because even if it's only 1080p, because if you're paying 500 quid for this console, you can't build a high refresh rate PC for 500 quid. That will then also be able to if you want to just play at 60 with like beautiful graphics on it, it would be really interesting to see if they move down that kind of area. Sure, you're never going to win over PC fans to be like, I'm getting rid of my PC and getting an Xbox, but for those people who are like, oh, I really want a nice PC, but it's £1,000, I can't afford that, or £1,500. Is this potentially an option for people? But I feel like they maybe would have announced that sooner if that was the case. So we'll see. The gunk, I'm just going to pass on that. As dusk falls, I'm going to pass on that as well. This was weird though. I will just say, like, is the style and animation, like, is that how the game's going to play? Like the really kind of like jarring like this, and then it like changes to another similar pictures type thing. Let's see if we can get it so it moves, so I can show you if you didn't see. Yeah, it's a weird kind of almost like a visual novel type thing. It might be a really cool story, and I have been like championing for years the fact that there are new ways to tell stories in video games. Because you can watch a movie and sit there and tell a story, but when a video game tries to do it for a lot of people, they're like, oh, I don't want this. But then again, this isn't a movie, is it? So, but if it's like choices and stuff like that, it could be interesting, I guess. Psychonauts 2 I wasn't really into too much. It's got Jack Black in it, so cool. What I definitely am into is Fable. Now, I'm a big Fable fan. And I think it's been criminal that probably one of the most interesting IPs that Xbox have had, they've just done nothing with for years. It's criminal, really. Fable, I think, is such an interesting game. It has so many interesting ideas. The lore is really cool. The humor of the game hits really well. Mostly, I guess, some of that is to do with the fact that there's usually a lot of kind of British humour in it. I think Lions Head, who the company, were a British company. And yeah, you had the kind of classic kind of voices in there. Stephen Fry actually narrates this trailer here, who's a very kind of well-known British. Well, he does everything really: comedian, presenter, actor, novelist, and yeah, we obviously saw nothing of the game really, other than a trailer with graphically. We don't know if that's going to be anything like the game. So we don't really know anything about it, but the fact that there is this Fable game out there is really, really cool, and I'm super excited to see that. It says optimized for Series X, so let's actually watch the trailer and see if they actually do give us any more info. It will obviously come to PC. I don't think there's much of a doubt in this. Now, this is interesting. Playground Games have made, I think, 3 games. Is it 3 or 4 we're up to now? Anyway, they make the Forza Horizon games. That's all they've ever made. Forza Horizon 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can't remember what we're up to. Despite owning them all and playing them all, I think we're up to 4, aren't we? Yeah, we're up to 4. So they've made 4 games, all 4 of them Forza Horizon racing games. I'm a little bit skeptical of how this is going to go. That's a massive change to go to what traditionally is a third-person action game. Yeah. I really don't know how this one's going to go. So while I'm very excited for Fable, I'm also very skeptical right now of how that's going to kind of work out for them. Yeah, hopefully that they'll do a good job. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, Forza Horizon was open world, right? So who knows? But yeah, I think it's an interesting. I'm going to keep an eye on that one for sure. Tetris Effect connected. I love Tetris Effect. This would be interesting. It sounds like a kind of battle mode. I think it's an Xbox exclusive as well. Well, launch exclusive, they said. This looks very cool. Warhammer 40,000 Dark Tide looks really cool. They've for years, I felt like they made terrible Warhammer games, and they're starting to turn the tide a little bit. Vermintide's pretty cool. I forgot what the other ones they recently kind of released. They're all kind of improving a bit. You know, for years it was kind of like really misused as an IP, or as a just a genre almost. But now I guess Total War. Sorry, I completely forgot about Total War. Love it. Yeah, they're starting to actually use the license pretty well. This looks cool, but again, it's not really gameplay. It's just thing. We actually might as well check it out. It's only like 1:30 while we're here. I don't know too much about this. I think it's like the Imperial Guards. It definitely looks very kind of horror-esque. So yeah, and it does look like it could be in the style of something like Vermintide, because you have the kind of 4 people, and it looks like they're 4 different classes. You can see one's got a sword. They've each got different weapons. I wonder if that's going to be the case, which I think would be pretty cool if we saw something like a Vermintide-esque game, but in a slightly different universe, guns and stuff like that. I mean, if this is how it looks in game, then it'll be pretty darn cool. I can tell you that much. I don't think this is how it's going to look, though, is it? Unfortunately. So there you go, Warhammer 40,000 Dark Tide. Now, this game is probably the one I am most excited for. Obsidian, who, well, I guess Obsidian are probably most famous for Fallout New Vegas. But I think their best work loved those two games so much. Tyranny as well they did, which is very good. Obviously recently they did Outer Worlds, which again I didn't love the combat of, but the world is great. They make great worlds, they do good stories, and yeah, I'm really excited about this game. It's there, it's been touted as Obsidian do Skyrim, and that excites me a lot. A lot. Yeah, this is kind of these are very long arrows, I will say that much. They get quite to the distance on these. But yeah, I guess it just kind of shows off the kind of vaguely different world that you're kind of going to go through. Again, we're not really seeing a huge amount in here. Okay, so we've got skeletons, so we know there's going to be like undead and stuff like that. And then this kind of looks cool. This kind of reminds me of like the deep roads in Dragon Age a little bit, which would be really awesome. I'd be well up for that. And then we see it's first person, sword, magic. Yeah, I'm really up for that. Really up for that. Very short trailer, obviously. I don't know when that's coming. I don't think they announced it. I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon. They look like they're still working on the Outer Worlds with DLC coming out for that. But this is where I'm saying that we're starting to see glimpses of the acquisitions that Xbox have made and how they could start to pay off for them within the next sort of 5 to 10 years. If AVOWED is an Obsidian Skyrim, then that could be pretty incredible. To have that as an exclusive, that could be up there with, that could be a challenger for The Last of Us, or something like that. That could be really cool. So yeah, we'll see really. But that one probably got me the most excited, I think, out of any game that we saw. I will say that Destiny 2 looks awesome. We'll play this just because it looks cool. The kind of new ice powers, or ice class, whatever. I don't know exactly what it is. I will get back into Destiny when the new Beyond Light hits. It looks very nice. Destiny looks nice anyway, to be fair. But the actual kind of ice powers look really cool. Yeah, the fact that you can kind of create these platforms. You can like freeze enemies in case. You can see there. That looks so cool. That does look very cool. And then shatter as well. I like that a lot. Yeah, I like the look of that. That looks cool. That gets me excited again for Destiny to try that out. Yeah, Stalker 2 as well, we saw. This is a launch exclusive. There's a little bit of confusion, I think, around launch exclusive and what that means. To my mind, what that means is that when these games release, they will be exclusive for a amount of time on Xbox. And possibly PC, I think, rather than going to PlayStation as well. Rather than, I think some people took it to mean that these were the games that were going to launch with the console, which I don't think that's what it is. But it looks interesting. The original Stalker, I know, is like a very kind of like Metro Exodus-esque kind of dark, very gritty game. And I know it's much loved in the kind of PC community, so I'm very intrigued to see the second one and what they kind of make with it. It looks pretty cool. It's obviously going to be kind of very heavy kind of horror aspects of it, but we'll see. The Medium as well looks really interesting. It has this kind of dual world and stuff going on. It looks pretty interesting, and I believe that's also an exclusive on Xbox. And then we have Crossfire as well, which looks kind of cool, very Call of Duty-esque. Apparently they're trying to kind of tap into the kind of CSGO market, but they've also got this story campaign as well. We'll see how that kind of goes for them. I think interesting thing about this was that the multiplayer is free to play, but you have to pay for the campaign, and it's not available on the Xbox Game Pass, which is like the only game here that is not available on the Xbox Game Pass. So that was weird, but I kind of get why they kind of showed it, because the multiplayer is probably what people will mostly play. Very, very Call of Duty-esque. But if the shooting looks pretty tight, and it'd be nice if we, what we need right now is another battle royale. I'm being sarcastic, but I guarantee we'll have a battle royale mode. Yeah, so we'll kind of see what, and that's kind of it that we had. Those are the games, I guess. Let's pause that one while we're there. So yeah, as I've said, the kind of Fable, Avowed, definitely my favourite from this. Intrigued by Halo, but a little disappointed, and everything else I'm a bit kind of like, we'll see. Well, I will say now, and just talk about quickly, I think, is the Microsoft direction on what my guess as to what they're trying to do, or the direction they're taking for this next generation, because they clearly are doubling, like they're putting everything into this Game Pass, and Game Pass is obviously like incredible value for what you get. My personal opinion is that this will probably likely be the last console generation we get. I think that within the next sort of 5 to 10 years, I think streaming will come in, and that will be where these people go. So I think Xbox are gearing up for that more than Sony are. I think Sony are still planning to sell consoles. They're still planning to do a lot of kind of exclusives, and that's their battle. When you think about it, it's a well-known fact that these console makers, they don't make any money when they sell a console, so they actually generally lose money. They want you to buy the console, so you then buy the games from their stores or whatever, and they then make money off them. That makes sense, right? It's like when you buy a printer. The printer is often sometimes cheaper than the ink you're buying, because what they want you to do is buy the printer, and then you're constantly buying the ink, which is where they make the money. They'll lose money on the printer. They don't care. They want you to keep buying the ink. They want you to buy the ink. They want you to buy the paper. So PlayStation and Xbox, they don't care about the console necessarily making money off that. They want the long-term, 5 to 10 year investment you're going to make in them, and all the games you're going to buy. If we think about, I'm sure the average person over the lifespan of a console will spend more money on games than they will on the console. It's probably a standard thing. And I think Xbox are thinking that we're going into streaming. We need to be known as, the games company, as in we offer the best package for games, and we make great games, it's great value, and we already have this subscription service in place, which Sony don't. It's bold, I think, strategy to what it feels like is they're almost negating this generation. They're trying to kind of move into the next, and it could come back to hurt them, because we've seen that they made some mistakes on the last console generation and never caught up with Sony. Their biggest mistakes was that they just didn't have the games. Like, people can forgive you for a crap presentation if when those games are released you're hitting 90% on review scores for your exclusives. That is what will ultimately cause people to buy a PlayStation. If you looked at it now and said, I can offer you a PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox Series X for the same money, the Xbox Series X is a better machine, but I'll take the PlayStation Pro every time, because at the end of the day, the games on it are way better. So I don't know where we're going with this. The next generation of consoles for me right now, graphically, looks disappointing. There's a few games I've seen from Sony where I've been like, interesting, but we don't know yet. if they'll look like that when they come out. Because for me, if console really wants to compete with PC, it's frame rate that they're doing. This whole 4K thing, I feel, is really it's misleading. I think that the problem happened where the console generation has to kind of keep up with the TV generation. TV obviously leapt from 1080p to 4K. In PC monitors, it went like 1080p, 1440p, then 4K. And 4K is still very rare nowadays. Like 1440p is kind of the standard. I own a 1440p monitor with a high refresh rate. That's kind of the sweet spot right now. And I feel like we're not hitting, like, consoles have skipped that generation and their power can't compete. You know, they're doing 4K, but it's 30 frames per second. I mean, that's shocking. I want to see a console doing 90, like aim for 1080p, 90, 120 on your games like Fortnite, Warzone. Start doing that and you'll start competing with PC. Don't do that and it's not going to happen. And these consoles will be capable of it. I'm 100% sure of that. You know, it might not graphically look quite as good as a PC at the high settings, but it's never quite going to do that. But if there's not even the option to hit those high refresh rates, then for me, there's no reason whatsoever that you would get a console as a PC owner, because if you're into those sort of games, if you're into your first-person shooters, which is kind of what consoles have made their name on in a way, then you're playing an inferior game. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to finish up there. Let me know what you think. I'm always intrigued about these kind of things. What was your favourite game, I guess? Which one really interested you? Are you still, committed to getting an Xbox? Or are you still committed to getting a PlayStation? Are you on the fence? Are you going to get both from what you've seen today? Yeah, I'm intrigued. And also, what do you care about? Do you care about 4K? Do you care about high refresh rate? I think it's interesting, but yeah, we'll see. Till next time, guys.